What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Wedding Film School Show, and today we have a very special guest. We have Henry from the Brothers Martens, and we're asking the question, how do you define your unique look?
I'ma get right in my bag. Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.
All right, so welcome to the Wedding Film School Show. We have an awesome show with you today with a very special guest, but before we get started, I want to introduce my co-host, Mr. Jason McCutcheon.
What's up?
What's up, dude?
Yeah, man. I mean, this has been a lot of fun doing this show, right?
I mean, I feel like we've been doing it every single day for the last 4 days because there's been a lot that's been announced in the last week.
Yep.
I'm excited to just get back to like normal podcast mode and sleep. We've been putting so much work into kind of, the podcast and live channels and, doing a lot of this stuff, which has been fun.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, we're actually adding value to people. If you're like a new filmmaker, you're somebody who's getting started, or you're a vet, I mean, we want to be adding value. So let us know what you're enjoying and what would help you, because that's what the kind of stuff we want to be doing.
Well, I'll tell you what I have been enjoying lately is my lights from Kinotenic. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there. They're the maker of the Practilite. And if you head over there today, they are offering a special deal for our Wedding Film School Show listeners. 25% off the whole order, right? Isn't that how it goes down?
You can order 7 Practilites.
For 25% off, which is actually a really great deal.
It's a crazy deal.
I couldn't believe they offered that.
I mean, I would have saved hundreds and hundreds of dollars if they would have had that deal.
Well, I think it's a good excuse for us to just buy more because we use them all the time. But if you head over to their site, what's the code, Jason?
WFS25.
Very cool.
Which will appear somewhere within this world right above my head.
Yeah, check them out. Today we have a special guest. Jay, do you want to introduce our guest today?
Yes. Right. So if you have been living under a rock for the last 4 years, you're on the Wedding Film School channel, and you have not been paying attention to any filmmakers but Craig Adams, there's a lot of new people that are freaking killing it these days, and one of our goals on this show and on this channel is to start introducing people to really inspirational filmmakers. And so today we got one of those guys on here, somebody who I think is really, really, in a lot of ways, kind of a trendsetter in our industry. What's up, Henry?
What's up, guys? You guys are so nice. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for being on, man, and excited to talk today about defining a unique look. I think it's a question that a lot of people are asking, especially when they're starting off, which I think is what a lot of Wedding Film School listeners are, is just, hey, how do I do this thing? Like, I know how to operate a camera, I know how to set up audio, and they want to get to the exciting part, which is like defining their own kind of look, becoming like a director on a film set kind of deal, but in the wedding world. So excited to talk a little bit about the day.
Before we get into the meat of the topic today, we're going to do something. 3 questions with Henry Martin. So the first question we got is, what is in your kit?
Yeah, the infamous kit question. Very much like you guys, I'm also a gearhead, and I think it's really important. It kind of does tie into the big topic of defining your look and trying to figure that out. But in my kit, I'm shooting on Blackmagic cameras, Pocket 4Ks and a Pocket 6K, and recently decided to make the plunge into adding a A7S III as my gimbal cam. So basically, I have A cam, B cam, Pocket 4Ks, and then my Pocket 6K is just for special uses. We'll get into that later, or a ceremony cam, and then A7S III on the gimbal, and then I'm using Tamron lenses. There's a reason for that, just because they have IS, so we'll kind of talk about that later also with defining your look. It's nice how this gear question really ties into that whole segment as well. And then for the audio recording, using the new Zoom F2s, which I absolutely love. I know that there's been a couple issues with people having like sound popping, so I'm a little bit hesitant to recommend them. I haven't had any issues with them, so I love them. And then of course the Mix Pre 6 Mark II for like my audio recorder that I'm using for like soundboards and stuff like that. And then for lights, I'm pretty crazy. I bring an Aperture 300X, and then I just also purchased their 60X. So that's what's in my kit.
Next question we want to ask you, Henry Martens, is what's your most favorite wedding film that you shot recently?
I'd say it's kind of hard to define like my favorite, but the one that I'm kind of most proud of, I guess you could say, recently is this film that I put out from Colombia, and just my career is kind of shifting from doing these highlight films into doing multi-day kind of documentary filmmaking, but this film still falls into this shorter category, and it's probably my favorite highlight that I've put together in a long time, just because it's so like kind of a mishmash of all my styles into one. Everything that I love about weddings, I kind of put into this one film, and the couple gave me like full creative license, where when I was editing it, I didn't have to I didn't worry about anything. So it was really nice, and it was very like creatively freeing to kind of put all these different homages into one film, and then the couple ended up just like loving it. So so it's this film from Colombia, and it was a multi-day event, but instead of doing a documentary style, we did short highlight film, and it turned out really cool in my opinion. What stands out the most to me about the film is actually the opportunity to work with a couple like this, where their main goal was to entertain their guest at every single step of like the wedding process. There wasn't a single part of the wedding that was really like just about them. They just wanted to entertain their guests. So from like the filming perspective, what excites me about it is it gave me a lot of unique content from a wedding to include. So we have at rehearsal dinner, like night, it was kind of like a welcome party really. We have like Colombian ballet dancers. We have 3 different performers, like a DJ, a violinist, then like another group. You know, on the wedding day, we have it's a surprise flash mob that's like, they're dressed up, they're disguised as like waiters in like the reception, and they're opera singers, and like it was just like this amazing experience. They have a surprise famous reggaeton artist from Colombia who performed at their reception for like the second half of it. Just like layers on layers on layers, and so like that's what I was trying to build in the film, and it was so cool to just like be a part of that, and try to like show like how much these people care about like their guests' experience.
Where can people watch that if they want to see the whole film?
Yeah, they can watch it on our Instagram at the Brothers Martens. That's like the only place that's live right now. We're holding off on releasing it on our YouTube channel.
We're going to link to their Instagram in the description, so definitely check that out. We're also going to be linking to Henry's kit, so you can go check out his kit right on the, what is that website called? Kit.whatever.
Kit.com. Yeah, we'll put a link below to Henry's kit specifically. So if you want to see what he's using to create his amazing films, that's where you can go.
The final question in our 3 questions is, how do people get connected with you if they want to know more about Henry Martens?
I run a small website called prolutz.com. There's some LUTs on there for Sony shooters, as well as like one thing I recently started doing is doing film reviews for people, and I do one-on-one workshops with people. So that's a great place to do it. But of course, Instagram's also great. If you guys want to slide in my DMs and just talk about whatever, I'm pretty easily accessible and love to chat with people about the industry.
Look, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. Can we be a little bit transparent here? I'm gonna tell you one of my deepest, darkest secrets. I actually really don't enjoy editing that much. If you were to give me the option between shooting and editing, I would pick shooting 11 times out of 10. And if you've been editing and doing video production for any length of time, you know that dread in your heart as you know wedding after wedding after wedding keeps on mounting up, piling up on your backlog. It really sucks. I hate it, and I'm sure you do too. So what can you do about it? You can, of course, ignore it. It's not gonna go away. You can hire a video editor to work on staff. Maybe it costs you 50 to 60 grand plus taxes. Or you can simply reach out to our friends at No Backlog. They make it super easy to knock out edits while you focus on other more important things like growing your business and making more money. And that's what it's all about, right? Save time and money by working with a professional, reliable, and affordable video editing partner. And get your life back today. You can spend more time with your kids, with your spouse, with your important other person, or you can simply just play more video games. I don't care. This is a no judgment zone, man. So make sure you're visiting nobacklog.com and get started today.
All right, we're back, Henry, and so today we're talking about a topic, and like it a little bit connects with something I've heard you speak about in the past, which is just finding your voice. Today we're kind of maybe fine tune it a little bit and talk about defining your look. So for you, you are currently a Blackmagic shooter. You're very experienced. You've done a lot of things. Tell me about that journey for you to kind of arrive at what you're currently doing, and how like your idea of like what was in your head factored into the choice of gear.
Totally. So just like everyone else in the industry, I started off just no idea what I was doing, but I got very into gear very quickly. And so started off on Blackmagic, which is ironic. My very first camera I ever bought was on Blackmagic. I accidentally won an eBay bid. So I had to learn a lot of stuff.
Hold on. Accidentally won an eBay bid.
Yeah. You know, like when you're on eBay and you're like, oh, I'm going to place this order. It's never going to, well,
I'll never win this.
I won it. I had to borrow the money from my brother to pay for it. I didn't even have the $1,600 for this camera.
I'm not going to lie.
You know?
I've done that with guitar equipment before.
Yeah, right? Like
So.
stuff you're just like, oh, I would die to have this. So I got Blackmagic first, and it was cool for me because I actually had to learn manual focus. And back then, they didn't even have good autofocus. But I had to learn manual focus really well, and I had to learn kind of like more in-depth stuff. But then I realized, oh, there's an easier way. So I went from Blackmagic, and then I moved into Lumix GH3s for a while, and then the A7S1 came out, and I'd always wanted a full frame camera, so I bought one of them. And for me, that was like the defining moment of when I realized that gear doesn't necessarily help you achieve like a certain look, but it can inspire you to create differently. And so the first wedding that me and David Lee shot together on the Sonys, it ended up being the first award we ever won. It was a film convert competition. Like the wedding was just, I don't know if it was the wedding was amazing. We got lucky by just having new cameras, but it was just bizarre to me that at that time switching camera systems made us shoot this wedding totally differently than we ever had before. And then that film ended up doing really well. So we switched to Sony, and we were on Sony for several years. We were all holding out, waiting for the A7S3. I eventually had to give up because I was filming in like locations around the world where I personally felt like I was uninspired by the footage. And I've learned now that clients are probably not going to pay more for like specifics. Like they're not going to say, oh, like, you're shooting on a red, I'll pay you more for a red. In the wedding industry, it's very rare. But they do pay more for better quality work. And if the gear inspires you to create in a new way, then your work will be better. And I think that will help build your style. So the reason I switched to Blackmagic originally was because I've always had an obsession with like image quality and stuff. And when I was filming in Iceland the first time, I had a second shooter, Seth Dunlap actually. We were shooting together, and I was shooting on an A7S2, and he was shooting on a red helium 8K like camera, And
Just
so
one
I
of
got
those
to
little
compare
wall
the two.
things.
Yeah, just a $40,000 camera, no big deal. And so I got to compare the footage side by side. And it was like that defining moment for me where I was like, oh man, like I'm missing out on like when I'm in epic locations, like I'm missing out on this this detail that's in the image. And so I started doing research, but as you know, Blackmagics are very limited in like their convenience factor, and so I was I held off. I was just waiting for the A7S3 for as long as possible because I was transitioning from this super polished look that I was able to get with a gimbal and the A7 III that has IBIS and stuff. Very polished, very. I cared about things being perfect. And as I moved forward in my career, I started wanting a little bit more raw, feeling a little bit more, people call it handheld, but I think of it more like E&G style, more shoulder rig, where it's not super shaky like a lot of handheld. It's more just, natural organic movement. And so that's been my journey about kind of why I ended up on Blackmagic. It was for two reasons. One, it was just for the 4K and the image quality, and then two, just to kind of get that handheld look that just feels so right. When you're filming like a live event that's that there's a lot of emotion. You can actually have a lot of emotion in that small camera movement, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think as we shoot Blackmagic as well, we also shoot the Fuji X-T4, which is a little bit of a different vibe, but you can do some, it's the whole, like, people go, oh, I want handheld, and I'm like, you really don't, like, because I call it the DSLR shakes. Like, this move, the steering wheel effect is not, it's not what you would get if you were shooting cinema cameras. And then what we really want is cinematic. And cinematic is this move, not this move. So I think when you're looking at, like, I totally can connect with that in terms of, I think it conveys a level of skill, and it's inspirational and all that. So I love something you brought up, which is the push-pull of allowing clients, like you said, they don't pay for specs. They wouldn't even, if you said, like, oh, this is 12-bit color, they'd be like, so, right? They don't care. Honestly, like, if you were inspired by a Canon 5D Mark II, they would probably pay for that. Like, not everyone, but a lot of people. So, like, ultimately, we're talking about putting yourself in a condition to do your best work. So, kind of, for you, now that you've switched over, how have you seen, because I've seen your work change a lot, even some of the stuff that you haven't even started releasing in terms of, like, the longer films, the types of films you want to be making, right? How has this like shift in gear and philosophy affected the types of work you want to be making?
I would say that I was more inspired to shift gear because I knew what kind of work I want to start making, if that makes sense. So it's kind of the opposite direction. I filmed my first long form, like, documentary cinematic highlight film. I filmed it on an A7 III, and I was, like, the whole time just nervous because it's so run and gun. It was in France, and we were filming for, like, it was actually New York and France. We were filming for 5 days, I think. And the whole time I just had anxiety of, like, am I going to be able to recover this shot? Like, all this stuff. So there was so much worry. It ended up being fine, but during the editing phase, I had to edit around all these limitations from shooting on a compressed codec. And that was, like, a big thing for me when realizing, okay, if I'm going to go more documentary style and just be running around, I need a camera that I don't have to think about that stuff. I still think it's really important to nail things in camera as much as possible, but when filming, like, true, like, following people around documentary style, not like controlled events in a wedding setting, having a camera that shoots, like, raw, that you can fix all the issues, that was a big deal for me. But the challenge of this is that so handheld is, like, one thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's, like, one look that I like. But that doesn't mean that you have to be all handheld. I really still love gimbal work, especially on days when you're following 5 people around the south of France and they're, like, at the beach and then they're going shopping. Like I want some gimbal work in there. So that's actually been the biggest thing with my biggest hurdle for the last 18 months has been being able to use a gimbal with the Blackmagic. And so that's why, like, I've spent so much money on different gimbals, and I'm the worst about returning stuff or not using it, and then I, like, go past, like, the 30-day return window.
Do you have, like, 8 gimbals like we do?
I don't have 8, but I do have a $5,000 gimbal that I can't use.
What is it? Because
it's too heavy. It's the Helios.
Maybe we can talk afterwards because we need something for the Ursa.
Dude, it will handle it. It's beast mode.
I will say
so heavy.
The Ronin 3 Lab S does work okay with the Ursa. Anywho.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I even bought the Crane S3. Yeah. Like, yeah. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. I bought that, and with the extension and all that stuff.
It's so heavy though.
It's heavy and manual focus. Like, I can manual focus the crap out of it if I'm on, like, handheld or anything like that. I cannot manual focus gimbal shots. It's not, like, my composition suffers so much.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, that's the reason I decided to just make the switch back to A7S III for gimbal, because I shot on it out in a wedding in Big Sur, and, like, clearly the image quality is not as good, like, but you have to like be realistic about like what you're trying to achieve, and convenience factor versus actually getting the job done. So because like I said, a client's not gonna care about like a 10-bit image over a 12-bit image or an 8-bit image or whatever. So that's basically, I'm kind of saying all this stuff to just be like, my journey of like what I'm creating right now was like, and the gear that I bought was very much so I could create these longer form films and documentary style films, and have just be really confident about running around and not worrying about being overexposed or being underexposed or my white balance being off, so that I can just focus on the moments and just film things in their entirety. And then I hate to say this, but like if I need to, fix it in post.
Henry shoots Blackmagic. We shoot Blackmagic as well, especially for commercial work. It's pretty much all I would really use. If you're starting out, in my opinion, Jared, I don't think it's for the faint of heart, and I don't think it's for. If you want to try it, I will never tell someone like don't try something, but I do think like it's a very challenging camera.
It's kind of like a nuanced conversation. I think it's interesting because a lot of people on forums will be like, it's not about the gear, it's about the filmmaker, and that cliche that you're like, yeah, you're right.
Let me see your work.
But at the same time, I know for me personally, when I've gotten a piece of gear that's challenged me, it does make me a better filmmaker, right? So it's like that kind of like catch-22 where it's like, well, yes and no.
Well,
right?
So here's a great example, Henry. I'm sure you've had this experience. For about a year, I had only shot Blackmagic, all manual focus, using the Edelchrome focus wheel and just kind of like really focusing on that. I did a wedding where I had to step in and shoot Fuji X-T4, and I looked at my footage. I'm like, this footage is so much better than what I used to shoot. Like
Interesting, right?
I freaking leveled up.
Yeah.
Because I went to the gym, and I think that's what will happen to you. And like, if you really want to challenge yourself and increase your skills, I do think Blackmagic, like the degree of difficulty from the planning standpoint, from the carrying the weight, you have to think about power, you have to think about all these issues, and you're doing it all for one freaking reason, so you can get that file.
And I would say that your composition is going to level up too, because
Completely.
a real discussion is full frame versus APS-C versus micro four thirds. When you're shooting like epic stuff, like that's why I didn't care. I was like, yeah, I'll give up bokeh because I'd actually love to see more of Iceland in the background or whatever. But when shooting local weddings, which we do, I've noticed a really big difference in the cleanliness of my background, right? When shooting on these Blackmagics, and I have the speed booster, and so it's equivalent to like an APS-C or Super 35 or something like that. But because of that, my composition has gotten severely better because I don't have this just beautiful blurred background behind me when shooting, in scenes that just aren't as epic or as pretty. So that's like another benefit of that. But I will say, like, I've been considering for a long time, if it wasn't such a huge financial investment, I've been considering for local weddings just going back to shooting a Sony and doing A7S III for local jobs because the file management's easier. I don't need all this ridiculous, dynamic range at these local jobs. So there is like a conversation to be had about like gear for specific jobs.
So one of the biggest questions that people have when they're kind of starting their own wedding filmmaking careers, or even in the middle, I think all of us have like a mid-career crisis too, like who am I, what do I want to make, and ultimately a lot of it comes down to my look, like what defines me. So how important do you think it is to have a unique look that's totally just you?
For me, it's been important, right? But that's a really hard question because I don't think I'm doing anything that's like 100% unique. I think that everyone is inspired and maybe imitates people and until they figure out what it is for them. So like the importance level of having a unique look, I think is really important. But at the same time, I kind of be realistic with myself and like I know that bookings in business is so much more than just your work. So that's like a whole nother topic, right? But I think that your work needs to reflect what you want to do and what you want to create, and the type of clients that you want to work with. Which is like the oldest saying in the book: you shoot what. The oldest saying in the book is you shoot what you show. So like, I know that for me, that's been a big thing. Is like we're super selective on what we show because we've been trying to leverage up, our weddings, and over 5 years or 6 years or whatever it's been, it's really worked for us. So. I would definitely say that people define, like, we have two types of client. Well, not two types of clients. We have like two types of work. And those two types of work are two very specific styles. We have fun and wild, and we do have cinematic and like super like heartfelt like stuff. So we're kind of playing both sides of the field, like, and it's worked really well for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the thing that I like about your work, Henry, is like when we met you, I was like, oh, Henry's work and what he does kind of is reflected in his personality. Like Henry's on the dance floor, he likes to have fun, and then his edits are some of the coolest dance floor edits that you could see too. So it's like,
Thanks.
your personality and who you are definitely shines through at the end of the day of your work. One of my favorite quotes was in a book from Chris Orwig, and he'd said, hey, if you want to create better work, become a better person, become like a more interesting person. And I think that's where like a lot of filmmakers really should be focusing, right? Is like not necessarily should I be worried about my color or should I be worried about my look necessarily, but like what is my defining style? What am I attracted to? And like those are really the things that they should be working on, right?
I'll always say this quote from Euro Dreams of Sushi, which is like one of my favorite documentary movies. But he's, this 85-year-old sushi chef, the only 3 Michelin star sushi restaurant in the world. And he says, in order to make great food, you have to eat great food. And I think it is a little bit that in terms of filmmaking is like, what are you ingesting? And so like that'll end up being reflected in your look. So I think one more thing when it comes to look is, look at this cutie.
Bentley. He's going to join us for the rest of the podcast.
Great.
Sweet.
So what, like, I guess when you think about a look, right? Like a look is defined by so much more than just
color correction.
It's not one thing.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
many.
And that's a trap that I think a lot of people get in, and that's why you always see like people asking like, what LUTs are you using? And because they think by just applying Henry's awesome LUTs that all of a sudden I'll become Henry Martens. It's like,
or it'll look like Henry. It'll
doesn't
not
work like that.
Can I chime in on this?
Yeah.
Throughout my career, and there's many ways to do it, right? And we all pick things, but throughout my career, like my hierarchy of things that were important to me, right? First, like having a unique color grade. In the Dallas market, when I came in, I had the most stylized, it wasn't good, I just had the most stylized color grade, and it set me apart. So that was like number one. And then once, that was like thing, then I started focusing on more on cinematography. I didn't get to actually story until like year 3 probably of like being like a really important thing. And so like for me, it was just like always about being different and like trying to be different in different categories, because like you said, defining a look or a style or whatever you want to call it isn't one thing. So I think it's important for new filmmakers to focus, choose one thing you want to focus on for 6 months and see your progression and see if you get better. And if you can continue to focus on it, or you can choose to like pivot. Because then my next thing was, okay, I want to start incorporating sound design. That was like the 4th thing I wanted to focus on. So like it's been like building blocks for me, which sounds really basic, but like that's how I got better.
I have a question with that, Henry. So I think a lot of filmmakers, when they first start out, they're kind of just like, they're hired to do like their cousin's wedding. And then, you're slowly building up towards, doing awesome luxury weddings. I think that's most people's career path, and probably most people that are listening to, this podcast path. Maybe they're starting out and they're like, how do I get into, more of the work that I want to be doing? Because, a person's style factors into the work that they want to be actually doing. What was your journey like to start doing more of the weddings that you wanted to be doing? Like you talk about Iceland and shooting in Europe, and
Yeah,
I think a
didn't
lot
start there.
Yeah, we don't start there.
Yeah.
How did you start getting couples to do more of the shooting, or get them to trust you with your shooting style from the very beginning, I guess? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that in the beginning I didn't get anything because I didn't know what I wanted, right? But I guess your question is primarily like, how do you like build on? It goes back to the question of like figuring out what you do like and what you do want, so that then you can ask. Like, here's the thing: if someone hires you, I don't think it matters if they hire you and you're $1,000 or $10,000. It's because they see something and they trust you enough to give you money. And so like at that point you have like the not the authority, but you have the right to like ask for stuff.
Yes.
And ask for trying different things. There's a lot of talk in the wedding industry right now, which I think is very, very healthy. I think it's very good about like the balance and people's mental health in the wedding industry, which I think is a really important topic. So I don't want to discount that at all, but I'm going to say something super controversial. I think you got to Gary V the shit out of your like first 2 years in this industry. Like you have to go.
Don't get me started.
Okay, I mean, I really do, like, because now, but here, like, for those of you who don't know who Gary Vee is, like, you just gotta not sleep. You have to go 120% all the time. That's how I got to where I am now. And then now, I've been focusing more on my mental health. But but I just think that like if you're really trying to create like amazing work, or even just build a business that is like super well balanced, I think that you just have to put in like everything when you're first starting out. Yeah. And by doing that, it's practice. And with practice, you have, and this, okay, here's the answer to your question, my long-winded answer. You have to be real with yourself. Like, you have to actually look at your work that you're putting together and try to find things that you're not doing well and get better at them. And like I said, just it's so like simple. I sound like a noob. I'm like, oh, just like my mic sounded good at this wedding when I put it on him and bad at this wedding. What were the differences? And that's how I found out about what's called mic placement and how that makes a difference. Like I put it like down here one day and I put it up here another day, and it made a huge difference. So like it's just like analyzing your own work. Maybe have people in your life that you can take criticism. Like don't like ask for like feedback or like, hey, is this film good? Just say, hey, like if you could change one thing about this, or if you notice one thing that's off. That's my idea of like getting better over time, because then you will start to find out what you do want to ask for, and then you'll start putting out work that's unique. And there's another thing I want to talk about, but I know Jason wants to jump in right now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, all that stuff of like collecting feedback of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Most people I've seen, like I'll hear a guy like, oh, I did this style and then I didn't like it, so the next wedding. And I'm like, we generally don't make changes on anything until we've done like a giant pile of weddings.
Because you're not going to be good at anything new you do.
Yeah. So we could suck at it. And so like give yourself, the reason you have to grind is because you have to give yourself a lot of data very early on to start assessing the value of it. Was my approach right, but my execution wrong? Was my execution wrong? Were they both wrong? Do I have bad taste? Like, who knows? Like, there are things where we've literally something as simple as we shot one wedding with the Blackmagic. We didn't convert it to Rec 709 in our monitor effectively, not the right way. And our color took way longer in post because I was like, nah, that wasn't what we were shooting. All these issues. Next wedding, we nailed it. We made sure we got the profiles right. And then you end up with 4 hours shaved off your post-production. That would be like if me shooting that wedding going like, oh, these cameras, they actually suck. The color's not that good. It's like, no, I screwed up. I didn't convert it right. Of course you're going to make those kind of mistakes. So I would say give yourself enough data to actually make smart, decisive choices. And so be decisive, but be patient.
Yeah. And on that note, because I know I feel like I just started yesterday, and I feel like I can go back to like some of the same feelings that I had like when like starting, like just like I didn't even have all these education like opportunities and podcasts to listen to get better back then. You know, it was like very, very limited stuff. And so one thing that I think it's a backwards way of engineering this, but it might be easier for you. You might be saying, okay, but I don't know exactly what I like, or I don't know exactly what I want, which is fine. Maybe ask yourself the same question a different way. What do you not like?
I love that.
What do you
Good point.
What do you dislike? And then don't do that. And then you will kind of like whittle your way into finding something that you do like.
Mm-hmm. And you brought something up a couple times in even just passive ways, but like, and we do this similarly. Put out the work that you want to attract, right? Don't put out work you want to repel. But also, like, listen to the things that your clients call you about, that they go like, I saw this one wedding, I loved it, right? I'm not saying you can entirely do that because you might get into a rut there, but I do think it lets you know, like, people recognize my skill in this area. This is something to lean into a little bit to help me define my style, because ultimately we're running businesses here, and you don't want to have to be pushing a rock up a hill constantly where you're constantly trying to like, nothing you do is good enough. Like, there are some things that you do that are good that will make you money for the rest of your career, and you never should change them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Man, such a good topic. I mean, I just feel like getting feedback from like your inquiries, right? That is a super critical. And if you're not asking, like on our contact form, we have like, no, not in our contact form. Sorry, on like on our first consult call that I do, I literally ask them like, hey, is there any specific films of ours that stand out to you? And if they'll say like, oh yeah, we loved this film, I don't just leave it at that. You just follow up with another question, say, okay, I love that film too, whatever. Is there a specific feeling, or is it more technical? You love something that like, you know, the color or the music, you know, and kind of like get that feedback, and that way, and you know, write down notes and like have a list of like those things that Jason said, like what are your people that are interested in you, like what are you doing good, right? And then either expand on those or say, okay, I've done a good job with this, what's something else I can add into my films to elevate it, you know?
Or I've heard people do this, they go, I freaking hate these weddings, I need to stop doing that. If you are constantly getting inquiries for films that you don't want to make, you know, shouldn't be doing that stuff anymore. Like, I heard people who are like, I don't like these luxury weddings. I don't like dealing with these planners. I don't want that type of wedding. I want this type of wedding. And it's like, okay, well, like, part of defining your style is doing things that speak to the people who you want to work with. So, which, you know, I think that's like a very advanced level of filmmaking. Like, I will tell you, if you're listening to this and you haven't gotten to that level, I would think like 90% of wedding filmmakers are not curating their clients like this. And I don't know that they even will have the opportunity to. Most people are, like, if you are making a living as a full-time wedding filmmaker, you're in a very small club and you're freaking killing it. That's the first thing I'll tell you, is like, if you're able to pay all your bills making wedding films, you don't need to put this pressure on you to feel like some kind of failure if you're not creating some look and making like $250,000 a year shooting luxury films all around the world. But I do think everyone should strive to be proud of their work and to make things that they love. And I think your look, ultimately, like, as much as it's about attracting clients, and it is a key to leveling up, I do think it's also about you having fun and enjoying your job. So I'd love to ask you, as you defined your look, have you found that it's increased your like satisfaction in the job and what you're creating? And like, how has that affected what you're making? Or are you just never satisfied? It causes you to push harder. And maybe for me, that's the satisfaction, by the way.
Yeah, I'm never satisfied. I'm that kind of guy, right? And I know it's not a healthy place to be, right? So like, and that's the truth. But that is just my personality. That's my lifestyle. It's how I was brought up in so many areas of my life. And so while I'm never satisfied, I've gotten better at really believing that each wedding is its own thing, its own like its a personal relationship with that client, and like I did the best I could on that film, and step aside, move on. You know, I really try not to do a linear move on where I'm comparing each film to each film. I like to just step aside, move forward, step aside, move forward. I feel like that's. I heard John Mayer talk about that one time. He came out with an album called Continuum. Is this amazing album, and then he followed up with Battle Studios, and not very successful in comparison, but he talked about like how he just he's like, listen, we're not trying to like recreate that. Like that was its own amazing thing. We're on to the next project. It's a completely different project. And I really like took that to heart in the last like year or so, which I feel like has helped me out like mentally and emotionally. And actually what's funny is now that like I've kind of taken that guilt off myself, I feel like I'm making better films again.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of pressure too. Like when you're doing a thing so well, right, and you're crushing it, the next person that's going to hire you is going to be like, I want that thing. And you're like, well, we're in a totally different setting where you have a totally different environment. We have less time to shoot, but I can do something that's more customized and like, you know, let's go this way. Like it's a lot of pressure to do the same thing for people over and over and over again. And also I think it does get you in kind of a rut in general. Henry, I was wondering too, do you think the amount of weddings that you do affects your individual style as well? Because I know for yourself, you're like cutting back quite a bit, right?
Yeah, definitely cutting back. 2021 was supposed to be my year of 15, but it's going to be 2022 now.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Which I'm cool with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But that's just for my own editing style. I think, you know, I know a lot of guys in Dallas that kill it, and they have amazing businesses. They do 40 weddings a year, you know, and they work really hard, and that works for their business model and their style. But for me, the quantity of weddings dramatically affects the outcome of the film. And I actually think that for my editing style, which is so personalized, I actually take the time to get to know my couples before the wedding day. I've flown to the other states to meet people and hang out with them for a day and then flown back. It's a really big deal for us. I'm not recommending that for everybody. But with that being said, my personal life affects the outcome of these films so much. And so, the quantity is a huge, huge factor of that.
What was the most weddings you ever shot in a year?
42.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how like when you first
Second
start
year,
out.
Third year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting when you first start out, you're shooting like 4, 5, then you're like 15, and then if you're good, like the demand demands you just do more. Like you're just like, oh man, everyone wants me. I'm driving all over the place. This is crazy. I can't keep up with it. And then once you get up there,
I didn't
it's like
say no to
go
anybody.
full circle. Yeah, exactly.
I actually think I am all about like lead control, volume control, quality control. But I think initially at the beginning of your career, you should try to shoot as much as you possibly can shoot. That's my biggest advice for you is like, if you can shoot 120 weddings in 3 years, you should do it. Right? Because you need to hit critical mass and your reputation in your own area so you can keep making it rain while you're trying to get these luxury weddings or whatever your goals are. You need to be able to get your lead sources enough that you can reject people with price. You need enough data to confidently push your product out. And it's like a lot of people I know, like, they're like, oh, I'm just trying to cut my weddings down. I'm like, how many did you do last year? Oh, 15. How many did you do the year before? Oh, 10. I'm like, the second, and then I go, what's your close rate? They go, oh, I'm closing on like 70% of my leads. I'm like, you're going to be freaking screwed. Like, you don't have enough, you don't have enough referral base. You don't know enough people. You don't have enough body of work. This is like one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is like, they try to immediately get into that 15 wedding zone. And I'm like, you got to earn that.
I couldn't agree more, man. I know this is probably going to be super controversial, like everything you're saying, but like I agree 100%. We did over 100 weddings in 3 years, just over 100. It was like 28, 35, 42, or 42, then 35. And you know, like it was insane, but the amount of information and data that I was able to analyze by using a CRM especially, so highly recommend people that are doing this to use a CRM. it was critical in adjusting everything, not only just from like pricing standpoint, but like I got way better as a filmmaker. I learned, I failed my way to success so many times. So literally, I couldn't agree with you more. Like you do, I think that if you're, I mean, there's always exceptions, and I guess there's no absolutes, but definitely like don't feel like if you're shooting more than 15 weddings a year, you're overdoing yourself. Like
I need that
you have to
work-life
earn it,
balance. I need
yeah,
work.
you know, like it's true, but like it's only true like if you've, I don't know.
It's kind of true. It's kind of like
it's
farmers from like none of our parents or their grandparents got to decide to just not work. Like most people were working like 60 hours a week. And like when I have to hear somebody complaining about having to shoot 25 weddings, I'm like, so you're editing 3 days a week times 24. You're shooting 20. Like when you get to a certain place, you get to decide what your lifestyle is. And I'm all about that. I'm all about like earning your place, making decisions on what makes you happy, working to get to the point where you can have what you want. But in terms of like, I'm not about like keep people who haven't earned the day off, asking for a day off.
Yeah.
But like maybe though they know what they want though. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe they know.
Totally.
Like I'm always playing devil's advocate. I'm like playing devil's advocate against myself right now. But like because like maybe they're like, all right, like I only want to do 15 weddings a year.
I think they should
like,
build a business that can sustain it. I'm all about that.
Yeah. So it's just a very interesting topic. But I think if you have the opportunity to grind and hustle like as much as possible, I think that that will give you quicker success. I guess if anything, or you know, and defining success is a whole different topic. But it'll get you quicker to your goals if you can just hustle. Like I didn't turn away any clients for so long. I just worked. I would literally like just worked all the time, and it did get to a point where it wasn't good for my marriage, and that's when I pivoted. But I was able to pivot because I already established a name for myself and all that stuff.
Yeah,
It's like
I think it's
just
a good
hardship though, like going through something that's really hard, working really hard, finding where that edge is. I think is really important for creatives to be like, okay, that's where my edge is. What's the ideal lifestyle that I want to be leading, and then, you know, I think that's important for a lot of people to find, because when you first start, it's just like, you know, you're slow at everything. So maybe you can only edit, you know, maybe you're probably starting part-time. You're doing 4 to 5 weddings, and you're like, this is a lot. And then, you know, what's it going to take to get to that next stage?
The first wedding we ever edited took us like 4 months.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were doing. Like at the beginning of your career, you just suck at everything, and that's why it's hard.
Yeah.
But then you slowly get faster, and you're able to maybe take on 10 weddings, and then you're like, well, where's that balance between trying to be creative and then just getting the damn thing done at the end of the day? And like finding where, okay, where's my new line? Okay, I'm really good, and this is where my limit, the maxed out limit of my like professional knowledge, but then also my sanity is at the same time. And like then bringing it back to like, okay, this is where I want to be creatively, and almost pulling back so you can be, you know, doing maybe less weddings, but more of the creative, you know, it's like, it's a journey.
I'm a big believer, if you want to know your limits, you got to push your limits. And you don't want to.
Yeah.
There are more important things than money. There are more important things than being some baller creative that it's ego trip, all these things. So like, if at the end of the day, it's between you and your marriage and being an awesome filmmaker, I say quit being a filmmaker. But like, I don't think it has to go there, and I think you shouldn't be worried about testing your limits. I think, and especially initially, you should want to get as much data as possible so that you can do things that you really want to be doing and creating stuff you really want to be creating. Because now, back to the look, Henry, you're in a place where you want to keep pushing your look. You're at a place where you can make some decisions. So what is your next goal in kind of defining what is the Henry Martens, the Brothers Martens look?
That's a great question. I think for us, the big thing I want for the Brothers Martens is to transition from doing highlight films into being known and really like respected amongst like the industry for long form films. I've done the super short, like sexy, like highlight films and like and teasers and stuff, and we'll still keep teasers in the package. But I want to focus our primary product as multi-day, long-form cinematic docs or whatever. I found so much fulfillment in doing those and so much enjoyment in putting those together and the clients' reactions. And so we have some really cool weddings that got postponed that are going to be more of that, but we have about 3 of those in our reel right now, and we've been able to book some amazing opportunities to make the same style of films at other weddings that are going to be coming up this year and next year. So definitely looking forward to that. It's going to be like a fun transition for me and offering something that not a lot of other people in the industry are offering, which I always love.
So I have a suggestion for the name of the film.
Yeah, please.
You call them bro docs. It's just a name.
Bro docs?
Yeah, like bro. It's a bro Martin doc. So bro docs.
Bro doc. Yeah. So there's
I wouldn't go with that. I would say
A
A-B it a little bit before you decide
Just a
whether or not to use
suggestion?
bro docs. Henry, I will say I love those edits, man. I think you guys are crushing them. I think they're super inspiring. I don't know how you do them
Thank you so
because
much.
I try to do like a long format, like even like a 15-minute edit that's just like we're there for 3 days. And I was like, oh, let's make it a little bit longer. We'll extend our highlight film a little bit longer. And getting couples to like buy in, I find is like the hardest thing. And also coming up with interesting things, especially when you're not working with interesting people. We'll have to have you back on
the concept
a
of
little
like
bit later
the
to
long
talk through
form
that.
film is like how do I add the sizzle? How do I still maintain like a sense of movement? Like the story has to have narrative arc and it has to have tension, and it also has is it all realistic? Are you taking somebody into like a more of a like the cool thing about a recap / highlight film is that it from the very beginning the person's transported into an idealized version of their wedding, and so that's why it's why it grabs people right away. And we've always say like, I don't want it to be their wedding. I want it to be the wedding that they wanted to have. That to me is what a highlight film is. You cannot hide that crap in a 20-minute long film, and so it is challenging. So I'm looking forward to you having to deal with that challenge and not me.
I think there are definitely that's whenever like this type of film is whenever I will be selective of clients. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Totally.
I will not be offering this film to people. One, there literally is a specification that we have to film for 3 days minimum, but so they have to be having 3 days of events like base, and then but on top of that, like if they're having 3 days of events and like the Zoom call is a boring call, like we're not going to book them. Like I'm not going to put myself through that. I'm not going to put them through that. So it is an interesting topic, but that's definitely a topic for another time. And maybe I'll create a class on how to film these things, because it is, I will tell you this, it is so much more fun filming these and being a part of like the whole crew for like 3 days than just filming a highlight. But the problem that you mentioned, Jared, is like, okay, like how do you like extend this out? You have to film differently. That's why I can't offer a highlight film and a cinematic doc. I have to do like a teaser and a cinematic doc because the style of filming is so different. It's so many terabytes.
Yes, for sure.
Totally.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us today, Henry. Like I had said, definitely check Henry out. How does everybody connect with you again one more time?
Just on Instagram at the Brothers Martens, and then same thing. Like if you want to do like any mentor sessions or anything like that, prolutz.com.
Would you be willing to hop on a Clubhouse?
For sure.
On Thursday of this week, the week that we're releasing this podcast, we're going to be hopping on with Henry at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to just talk about the episode, allow people to ask very specific questions from Henry, what is going on in his life, what's going on with his filmmaking, talking about defining your unique style as well. So going to be really excited. Henry, how have you liked Clubhouse in general? What are some kind of main takeaways of the platform?
Super beneficial for the industry, super fun to hang out with my friends without any pressure of like video. Also just like popping in and out with no pressure. Big fan of the app. It's very cool to connect, and I love that there's no like, sure you have moderators, but I love that anyone can pop up there and be a part of like the panel of talking, so it's not like super elitist, which I love.
Yeah, it's really cool. So we're gonna do that. So if you want to get connected, you were listening to this episode, you're like, I wish I could ask Henry this. Well, now you can. So join us on
That's
Clubhouse,
awesome.
1:00 Thursday. We're gonna be there. It's gonna be a lot of fun. are we looking Jared Haas? Is that your?
Yeah, Jared Haas, Has. We usually, actually, we're going to be trying to make our own club as well. So it's not just a room. If you're familiar with Clubhouse, this is dorky stuff. But we are going to be eventually making our own club. But for now, you can find that room by adding me at Jared Haas Thursday, 1 p.m. of next week. Take a peek.
It's going to be great. So if you're checking out our channel, we got a bunch of other stuff on Wedding Film School. We got all the old school BTS stuff. We got all the new school stuff. Check it all out. It's all still there. Make sure to give us a subscribe. Hit that alert bell if you're on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please give us a review. 5 stars. All that good stuff. Really, really helps. We cannot wait to see you on the next Wedding Film School show.
I'ma get right in my bag. Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.